Yes, he's coming down. He's beginning to bow. He's over. Wow, what a sight.
10 years ago,
Fantastic.
in Baghdad's Firdaus Square, also known as Paradise Square, an American tank brought a chain up to a statue of Saddam Hussein and brought it down. And that was a seminal moment. It marked the end of the principal fighting in the Iraq War. And from that moment onwards, Baghdad was liberated and Iraq was, at least notionally, free. A day after that event, I found myself in Saddam's main palace in Baghdad, where a group of American Marines was going through papers and files in the office. A Marine was in Saddam's office going through his things along with a translator who was probably Kurdish. And he looked at one of Saddam's flags, which was right next to his table. In fact, it was this flag. And as you'll see, there's Arabic lettering in the middle of it. And it says in Arabic, Allahu Akbar, or God is great. And the Marine obviously didn't read Arabic, and he asked his translator what it said. And the Kurdish translator said, it says Saddam Hussein, which was not true. And the Marine then takes his flag and runs out to the porch of the palace, where there are hundreds of Iraqis have gathered and are actually cheering the Americans at this point. And he holds the flag up, and he takes out a Zippo lighter, and he's about to light it up. And the crowd was just horrified at the sight of this, and they couldn't understand why he was doing this. Fortunately, I was standing right next to him, and I was able to grab his hand and say, why are you doing this? And he said, well, my translator said it says Saddam Hussein, and so I'm going to put it on fire, and they'll like it. And I had to explain to him that that was not what the flag said, and in fact, if he set it on fire, he would probably set off a riot right there in the palace. So he gave the flag to me and says, can you explain it to these people? And he runs inside. And now this crowd, this very angry crowd, is approaching me. And my translator, fortunately, was able to shout above the din and explain to everybody what had happened. And I took the flag and I gave it to an old man who was in the front of the crowd. He looked like a tribal sheikh. And I said, look, this is a mistake. This was a well-intentioned mistake. You should have the flag. And he said to me, no, you saved our flag, and so you get to keep it. And so this is a very important memento for me. But that incident was also, for me, a sign of things to come. Over the next several months, because of an absence of understanding from both sides, American as well as Iraqi, tremendous mistakes were made in Baghdad, in Iraq. And those mistakes, like the firing of the entire Iraqi army, like the criminalization of the Ba'ath Party, like leaving the borders unattended, these mistakes would have enormous consequence over the next 5 or 6 years of Iraq's history. It would let in Al-Qaeda, it would strengthen the insurgency, and it would cost Americans and Iraqis a huge amount of money as well as an enormous amount of blood. 10 years later, Iraq is still today struggling with some of the consequences of misunderstandings like the one that nearly led to this flag being burnt.
.24-hour news in particular is a system that is the most easy to manipulate. 24-hour news is a giant echo chamber. So that's why, for example, Basra was reported as having fallen 17 times before it actually fell. And yet, within 24-hour news, when you're reporting it for the 7th time in that chain of 17 times when the city has fallen falsely, the fact that it's been wrong the previous 7 times just doesn't matter.
American armor is moving at will across whole swathes of Baghdad.
This is Raghi Omar reporting for the BBC from Baghdad. He described the arrival of the Americans as a liberation.
People have come out welcoming them, holding up V signs. This is an image taking place across the whole of the Iraqi capital today.
But it was not happening across the rest of Iraq. This was another illusion. The toppling of a statue of Saddam Hussein was seized upon by the invading force as a target of opportunity. What was not news was a US Army investigation describing how they exploited what they called a media circus. There are almost as many reporters as Iraqis, says the report. It was an American PSYOPs officer who ordered the statue brought down. The resulting TV pictures gave no sense of the bloody conquest of Iraq that was already well underway.
You know, I didn't really do my job properly. I think I'd hold my hand up and say that one didn't press the most uncomfortable buttons hard enough.
As you described the arrival of the Americans, you didn't tell us the story of how that whole statue was itself manipulated. Why not?
The entire live cameras of the world's press were on the balcony of the Palestine Hotel. And that was really the only events that they saw about Iraqis coming out. So it was a sort of made-for-TV moment. And the most telling moment in that whole day was when an American soldier climbed up a crane and put the American flag over the statue's face. Because in fact that was a true iconic moment of what had happened, that America had taken ownership of Iraq.